A pretty big significant storm is coming up very soon. We're talking about the potential for some strong tornadoes as well as some strong damaging winds and maybe even some spotty hail. We also can't rule out external factors such as flash flooding, so please be aware if you live in any of these areas that I'm about to talk about. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Nate, and welcome back to another weather forecast discussion, this time for February 28th, 2025. Tomorrow is March. It has been a very quick 2 months. And in doing so, and us getting through those first 2 months of really the winter season, we're now starting to get into portions of the spring season, or at least the transition into them. Before we get started, of course, before we talk about the nitty gritty, please be sure to hit that like button down below and share this with people who may potentially be interested. Taking a look at our convective and our severe outlook, today there wasn't really a whole lot of stuff that was going to be happening in the severe weather department. Tomorrow, maybe a little bit of thunderstorms over into portions of Arizona. On Sunday, we have the potential for a couple of thunderstorms to be possible across portions of the western United States as well as the central United States. This will probably continue to move a little bit further down south, but we'll have to see how the models continue to trend with all of that. Now, this is where stuff starts to get interesting. Monday, there isn't really a whole lot according to the outlook from the Storm Prediction Center, but Tuesday is going to be really the beginning of where we could probably see some significant activity. Right here, there is going to be the chance for some significant severe weather. We're talking the orange area being a 30% chance of seeing severe weather, and that is pretty rare for how far out we are. So this is definitely a sign that severe weather is coming back and that the spring season is starting to, well, spring, if you will. And so this is definitely something that we'll have to monitor, especially as we go from Tuesday into Wednesday, where now we also have an expanded risk for severe storms as well across portions of the southeast and portions of the mid-Atlantic. We'll move on to our future radar here with our model. Of course, the timing is at the top left-hand portion of our screen. This is the Euro model that we're using to be specific. We've been mentioning this Alberta Clipper system for the past, I don't know, I guess 4, 5, 6 days, whenever we first saw it first. And it's starting to kind of move on through portions of the Great Lakes. This will create a lot of snow across this general area and then kind of parallel the border of Canada and the United States as it continues to move on through. Here's our next system. This is going to try and potentially bring some thunderstorms over to portions of the south central United States sometime on Sunday. It's not expected to be too much, maybe some downbursts and some spotty hail, but it won't really be too much in the big time severe weather threat. Now, here is the storm that's right after that. This one's going to be the big one, all right? It's going to be creating some precipitation across portions of the western United States, but look at how much it builds here as we head from Tuesday morning into Tuesday afternoon. Look at this. A lot of storms over here, a lot of snow on the backside as well. I mean, this is a very powerful storm. And watch, if you want to pay attention to this number, right now it's 991. That's the minimum low pressure at the surface. And you'll see that this thing really just bottoms out. I mean, this starts to intensify more and more and more as you continue to head into the overnight hours of Tuesday into Wednesday. So that is the reason why we are watching this very, very closely. As this storm continues to intensify further, we could potentially see some increase in vorticity, some increase in intensity in some of these areas, and so we are definitely going to want to be ones to watch out very, very closely. Storms will continue to shift further and further east. A lot of snow on the backside here for portions of the Great Lakes as well as heading into the upper Midwest, so definitely something to watch out for that. Our next system's going to try and come in behind and try and bring a little bit of snow across portions of the Rockies, and that'll continue to kind of just move about through the central portions of the United States. Around this time, though, sometime around the 7th, 8th, and 9th of March, you're going to start to see a lot of precipitation that's going to build over here on the West Coast. And that is because we have an atmospheric river that is forecasted to potentially rear its head again. And there's going to be a lot of rain, potentially a lot of flooding, mudslides, rock slides, you guess it, all right? This is definitely something that we'll have to watch out for even after these storms. And it doesn't exactly go away because as you head further into the next week, and this is where things start to get a little bit more wonky as we head further and further out into portions of the model where it becomes maybe potentially a little inaccurate. There is the potential for another storm to follow in behind the atmospheric river. That would create a lot of precipitation over here in the western portions of the United States once again. So definitely something to watch out. We'll continue to keep you guys up to date with that as that continues to move on through. Our averages here, or at least our anomalies, I should say, this is pretty warm weather that we've been dealing with over the past few days. I mean, I'll tell you what, I have been enjoying these above average temperatures for the most part, but you can already see that there is some below average temperatures that are going to be riding with that Alberta Clipper system, and that is going to follow in right behind it, create a lot of cooler air across portions of the eastern half of the United States as the western half starts to really build up in its heat, if you will, right before the storm kind of moves on through. And so that heat will kind of shift on through a bit further and further east until the storm actually begins to develop. Watch this. Here, heading into Tuesday, we have a lot of our heat that's out in front once again, a lot of cold air that's coming in behind it, and this is basically a typical pattern for a low pressure system to kind of come in through and really start to kind of make a mess of things, at least temperature-wise. A lot of very warm and above average temperatures out in front of the storm, and then some below average temperatures even in behind it. So definitely something to note as that moves about. Definitely going to be a little bit cooler as this system passes on through into the end of next week. Moving on to our specific temperatures here, you can kind of see exactly what I'm talking about here as the cold air really just marches its way further and further to the east. And this is going to, as I said, once again, make things a little bit cooler. Some areas could get below zero, up into portions of the northeast. Below freezing is definitely possible across much of the United States as a low temperature heading from Saturday into Sunday morning. So do not be surprised with that, as this is definitely likely, all right? This is 100% definitely a thing. Don't be surprised just because we had all of this warm weather that occurred over the past week. Heading in from Monday into Tuesday, however, this is where things kind of start to get a little bit interesting because our warm air starts to continue to shift a little bit further north again. We have a lot of our cold air that's going to continue to try and pour in back behind the system. And so as we play this through from Tuesday into Wednesday, you'll see we have a lot of warm temperatures out in front of our storm, but back behind it, it's starting to kind of backfill with a lot of this cold air coming from Canada. And so we basically are just going to be going through this pattern of, okay, before the storm, it's going to be warm. After the storm, it's going to be cold. So definitely something that people should start to get used to, especially as we head into the thick of things for spring. Total precipitation, I mentioned flooding is going to be an issue here. We are seeing the total precipitation over the span of 3 days. We definitely have a lot of precipitation that is going to be centralized around where some strong thunderstorms could be. Of course, the big thing to note is that runoff will be a huge contributor to some of the flash flooding, as a lot of the rain doesn't exactly settle in the same spot. It'll want to go into low-lying areas, some flood-prone zones, and that'll, of course, create your flash flooding risks. So definitely something to make a note. If you live in any area that is flood prone, especially if you're in the path of this storm, I highly recommend that you at least have a plan of action to be able to go towards a place that may not be as flood prone. Heading into the end of that week, though, as I said, 7th, 8th, and 9th, a lot of precipitation that could start to build up here in the Pacific Northwest. Definitely something to watch out for. And then even after that, as the next storm could potentially, all right, we'll see what the models say as we get there, could potentially start to move on through, create a lot of precipitation across some of those areas. We'll just, as I said, we'll have to see what the signs say with this particular scenario. But definitely something to note here for our friends that are over in the western portions of the United States, especially along the coastline of the Pacific Ocean. You definitely will probably be seeing some form of precipitation, at least over the next, I would say, 2 weeks. So with that being said, we also have our frozen precipitation with our Alberta Clipper. A lot of snow is possible in some very confined areas, maybe an upwards of a foot to maybe more than a foot of snow is possible, but that is mainly going to be in the portions of Ontario and Quebec. So if you're in those areas, then definitely consider watching out for that. But otherwise, a lot of folks that are over here in the United States aren't really going to get a whole lot of stuff until we start to get into our next storm. This is the storm that is, of course, going to be bringing our big severe weather threat, but it also could bring a lot of snow into some of the higher elevations over here. And upwards of almost 40 to maybe even 41 inches is what this model is saying. This definitely could change. I will say the models, as you get closer and closer to a particular event, become more and more precise or more accurate. So it was definitely something that I think shouldn't be taken too seriously here. It's a big number, don't get me wrong, it's a huge number, but I don't think that should be something that we should take as concrete at least as of right now. Heading in, however, as the storm moves on through from Wednesday into Thursday, a lot of snow that is going to be building up on that northwestern edge of that storm. A lot of that cold air is meeting a lot of the moisture, and so therefore portions of Iowa, Wisconsin, as well as western Michigan and northern Michigan could potentially be seeing some heavy snow, especially as that moves on through into portions of Ontario and eventually even Quebec. Then our storm afterwards that could potentially be bringing some snow is going to be a little bit more widespread to some areas over here in the Rockies. That'll even head over into portions of the central United States before that kind of fizzles out a little bit. And then, as I said, we have a very good sign that there's going to be a lot of precipitation over here in the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia. It's just fully dependent upon the elevation for you. Whether you're in the higher elevation, you could probably get snow. If you're in the lower elevation, you're probably going to get a lot of rain. Now let's get into the specifics here. All right, we talked about the stuff surrounding the event and what the hazards could include besides the severe and the tornado aspect. We'll leave that towards the end of the video because that starts to get into some real nitty-gritty stuff. This is where we're going to be talking about our general flow of our jet stream. Our jet stream is important because wind shear is going to be able to correlate to how strong some of these storms are going to be. And so by looking at this here, we can kind of tell as to where stuff is going to be active and where it isn't. One thing that I want to note for everyone here, anytime you see the jet stream dip south and then buckle back north, this is called a trough. And then anytime a jet stream buckles north and then heads back south, this is a ridge, all right? Troughs are usually associated with low pressure systems. Ridges are usually associated with high pressure systems. So big thing to note here, you can see our first little system that's going to be creating some severe weather over in the portions of the south central United States. We're talking on Sunday. That's going to kind of move on through first before our next storm. And you can kind of see our next storm doesn't exactly look all too different from what this storm is over here. But let me tell you, when this thing starts to intensify, and I showed you guys this with the simulated radar, it really does intensify. Look at how quickly this thing starts to absolutely take over. At one point here, it actually ended up showing a very textbook V shape. This is some very, very powerful signs here for some strong lifting, some strong divergence aloft in front of it. And whenever you have this, especially as this heads over into a very volatile environment with moisture and energy levels, we're talking about some very strong storms, especially out in front of our right exit region here of our jet streak here. It's actually not exactly a jet streak. It's more of just our 500 millibar upper level winds. The reason why this is because imagine this here as being a consolidated area of air, as if we have wind that's being pushed through, say, a paper towel roll or a small cone. And then once that air pushes out, it starts to kind of go in all sorts of different directions. And when you have that, you can start to get a lot of rising, you get a lot of spin, you get a lot of just regular disturbance, a lot of just rising in general. And because of how strong this wind shear is, we're going to be having a lot of rising air out in front of this, which could potentially stir up a lot of storms that could try to end up becoming significant. That's the reason why we are going to be talking about strong storms that could sustain themselves and continue to mature on further. But what about our tornado risk here? Well, we also need winds that start to veer with height. Now, big thing here that I want to mention is that we are actually watching this at the 7 p.m. Time frame. All right, 7 p.m. up there is what we're going to want to kind of watch out for. Now, as we head on through, this is 7 p.m. right here, and you can see a lot of our wind is coming almost from the south, almost completely from the south, and we have some very strong winds. This is definitely a lot stronger than it was last night when we were showing you guys with our previous video. Very strong wind aloft that's going to be surging on through, and it's almost coming due south compared to our wind shear aloft, which is coming from the south and west. So this is definitely showing that we have some winds changing with height, and this could eventually start to create a little bit of a spiral pattern with that rising that I mentioned earlier. So that's the reason why we are watching that area very, very closely. And this even continues to be a thing even well before peak hours of Tuesday. Heading in from Monday into Tuesday, The wind shear, the low level jet here at 850 millibars, which is about 1 kilometer above ground level, is very, very strong. We're talking it is cranking up and down, and it is probably, there's a good chance that we'll be seeing some pretty strong sustained activity throughout the majority of the day. Maybe the afternoon all the way to the evening, even into the overnight hours. It's going to be a very, very long event just because of how strong this wind shear is and how early it really becomes prominent. We also want to talk about the prominence of moisture. Moisture is very important to thunderstorms because they can be able to really give the juice to try and create precipitation. And so some of that juice here does exist on, somewhere around Sunday. It's not too much, though, and that's the reason why I don't think Sunday is going to be too crazy. But it does have a little bit of a dry line setup. Things could be surprising. I've seen things, happen in worse conditions. So just definitely something to note. There could be some thunderstorms in and around that area. I wouldn't say super severe. I would just say thunderstorms in general. Monday, there is a small chance for maybe some thunderstorms that could try and develop. I would say specifically along this dry line is where my best guess is. And storms could form, probably move off towards the east. It does have a good enough amount of moisture to do it. Anywhere within these greens or 60-degree dew points is kind of what we're looking for. And you'll see as we move into Tuesday, well, that's exactly what we get. Afternoon hours of Tuesday, it is in abundance over here in the portions of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana. I really do believe that the main corridor is probably going to be areas over here in eastern Texas heading into central and northern Louisiana, as well as into portions of southern Arkansas, as well as pretty much the majority of Mississippi. I really do believe that that'll kind of be the general area to watch as that moves on through. And you can see that moisture is just absolutely chewed up as our big cold front is going to be surging on through. And we have a lot of dry air that's going to be punching in even behind it. So this is just a very classic setup for severe weather. Sunday, as we look into our energy levels, our CAPE, if you will, as convective available potential energy, we do have a good bit of it, but not too much. It's just enough for maybe some small thunderstorms to try and form and try and do stuff. Monday, it does look like there is some storms that could potentially try to exist in some of these areas. Tuesday morning, it does look like there is an abundance of energy aloft. We'll see if any storms could potentially try to take advantage of that. It's kind of a little bit up in the air because we're talking real specifics as to, thunderstorm dynamics, whether or not storms could be able to try and initiate. But it does look like the leftovers will try and form maybe some form of band or consolidated area over here near Kansas City. Definitely something that I would watch out for the potential of some severe weather that's possible. But down here, I mean, this is pretty hard to ignore. We're talking energy levels that are in upwards, maybe even exceeding the 2,000 to 2,000, almost 2,300 joules per kilogram of energy. That is well above what you need for a severe weather event, and that continues to sustain even into the overnight hours here before we start to get towards midnight. So definitely all signs pointing that there looks to be some pretty strong severe weather, at least somewhere within this area. So how about it? What about our timings here? Sunday, potential thunderstorms over the northern Texas panhandle. That'll move on through into Oklahoma before it finally starts to fizzle out. Monday, there is definitely some stuff that could try and form in central Texas as well as southeastern Oklahoma. Might be a little bit more widespread than that. Could be possible that we could see some stuff a little bit further towards the north. Tuesday morning, however, this is where stuff starts to get kind of interesting. Tuesday morning, we have a big complex of storms that moves through the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area, heading into southeastern portions of Oklahoma. Even some lingering storms that I was talking about that was near the Kansas City and Topeka areas, that could potentially try to form some stuff before we finally get to our real nitty-gritty. I mean, look at this. This is just a huge line of lightning, or a huge line of storms that are really just going to try and form and just kind of march its way on through all the way into the overnight hours, heading into early morning on Wednesday, before we finally start to see maybe a little teeny bit of relief here before we head into, once again, the afternoon, where storms start to become a little bit more widespread once again. But it still looks like regardless of whether there's relief or not, I do believe that there are two areas to really watch here. First off is southern portions of Alabama, Georgia, and as well as the Panhandle and the Big Bend of Florida. That will definitely be something to watch overnight. The potential for some tornadoes, especially water spouts that could make landfall, is definitely something that I am watching very closely. And then this is another storm that could try to form, or at least a different area, if you will. Storms could try and form here from portions of Charleston, South Carolina, all the way up into portions of Virginia. This is definitely something that I would watch out for the potential of maybe some amplified activity that could try and move on through there. So definitely something to note. And then, of course, as you get into the overnight hours, some strong thunderstorms. To what degree is still to be determined, but it will be moving through into portions of Central Florida as we head on through from Wednesday into Thursday. So what does that mean for us in our coverage? Well, big thing here is we already crossed off our video for today. This is all said and done. Now we're going to head over into tomorrow and Sunday, all right? We're going to have uploads at 11 a.m. Eastern, and then we are going to have a briefing weather stream. We're going to be live on Monday night, and we're going to be talking about everything you need to know as well as answering some questions. And then on Tuesday, we will more than likely have our live stream as well as the potential for night shift. We could be doing more than just 12 hours of live streaming here on the channel. So this is definitely something that I think a lot of you who may be interested in getting coverage could potentially be interested in our channel. And then Wednesday, we'll have to see what happens with these storms as they continue to progress, as well as what the models will say as we get closer and closer. But there probably will be some sort of live stream over there as well. So definitely something to note with that. And thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, share this with friends and family and on social media. Also follow me on social media, link will be in the description down below. I hope to see you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. So please be sure to stay tuned, tune into the video, share it with friends and family and on social media as we start to get more and more clarity on the potential of our tornado outbreak. Thank you guys once again. I will catch you guys next time, so peace out everyone.